Between 1972 and 1985, Marybeth Tinning brought 9 children into her world, or more precisely, into her home. To neighbors and friends, she seemed like any other mother, cradling her babies and filling her house with the laughter and chaos of childhood. But beneath the surface, something far more sinister was unfolding. One by one, they all died. 9 children, 9 funerals, 9 tiny caskets lowered into the earth, each loss more shocking than the last. The community mourned with her, unable to comprehend such relentless tragedy. For 13 years, the world looked away, accepting a string of medical misfortunes: SIDS, pneumonia, cardiac arrest. Doctors searched for answers, but each explanation seemed to dissolve into the next, leaving only more questions. But the truth was darker. A mother, meant to protect, was the shadow over every cradle. The nursery, a place of comfort, became a stage for unthinkable acts. This wasn't a genetic curse or cruel fate. No rare disease haunted the Tinning family tree. It was deliberate, calculated, and hidden behind a mask of grief. Marybeth wept for the cameras, but her tears concealed a chilling secret. Experts would later say the odds of 9 children from one family dying naturally were impossible, so astronomical they defied belief. The medical community was left stunned, forced to confront the unthinkable. Yet, for over a decade, Marybeth was seen as a tragic mother, deserving endless sympathy. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out, offering comfort and support. But what if that sympathy was her motive? What if the attention and compassion became the very thing she craved most? What if her embrace was the deadliest touch of all? A touch that brought not comfort, but silence. The story of Marybeth Tinning is a journey into the darkest corners of the human psyche, a cautionary tale that began in a quiet hospital room and took nearly 14 years to reveal its horror. It is a reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers can hide behind the most familiar faces. To truly understand Marybeth, you first have to understand the world she came from: Schenectady, New York. In the 1970s, it was a working-class city, a place where people clocked in at the local factories, trusted their neighbors, and lived in modest homes that lined quiet streets. Life was simple, but it was also hard. People leaned on each other, especially in times of loss. And in this world, there was nothing more heartbreaking than a grieving mother, someone who had lost what mattered most. Marybeth Rowe grew up just outside the city, in the rural town of Duanesburg. She would later describe her childhood as cold and lonely, marked by a father who was distant and a home that felt emotionally barren. That lack of warmth and affection may have planted a desperate need for attention deep inside her, a longing that would one day take a dark and monstrous turn. In 1963, Marybeth met Joe Tinning, a quiet, unassuming man who seemed to offer the stability she craved. They married, settled in Schenectady, and began building a family together, hoping for a fresh start and a better life. On the surface, the Tinnings looked like the picture of the American dream: a happy family, a neat home, and children playing in the yard. But behind closed doors, with each new child, a pattern of unspeakable sorrow began to emerge, one that no one could have imagined. The community saw only relentless tragedy: Marybeth, the heartbroken mother who seemed cursed by fate; Joe, the stoic father who stood by her side through every loss. Neighbors brought casseroles, friends offered shoulders to cry on, and doctors gave their condolences. The cycle of sympathy spun on, as if tragedy was simply part of life for the Tinnings. But beneath the surface, a different story was quietly unfolding. One of late-night hospital visits, sudden unexplained deaths, and a mother who, in the shadows, seemed to thrive on the attention that tragedy brought her. The quiet streets of Schenectady hid a terrible secret. The girl from Duanesburg had finally found a way to get the attention she had always craved, but at a cost that would haunt the community for years to come. The price would be paid by the most innocent, her own children, again and again, as the world outside remained blind to the horror unfolding within the Tinning home. The deaths began with Jennifer in 1971, 8 days old, gone from a supposed brain infection. 17 days later, 2-year-old Joseph Jr. died after a brief hospital visit. Barbara, born in 1973, lived 2 months before succumbing to SIDS. Timothy, born in 1975, died at 3 weeks, another SIDS case. 4 children gone, but no one dared question the grieving mother. Nathan was born in 1978, dead at 5 months from pulmonary edema. The Tinnings adopted Michael, but he died at 2, supposedly from pneumonia. Mary Frances and Tammy Lynn followed, both dead before their first birthdays, both labeled SIDS. By the time Tammy Lynn died, hospital staff recognized the pattern. They'd seen Marybeth before, always with a lifeless child, always with a story that didn't quite add up. The cascade of tragedy had reached its breaking point. The whispers began to grow. The truth was about to surface. With Tammy Lynn's death, the hospital staff could no longer ignore the impossible pattern. The sense of unease that had been quietly simmering now became impossible to dismiss. Nurses exchanged worried glances in the break room, and doctors began to question what they thought they knew. The hospital, once a place of healing, was now shadowed by suspicion and fear. Marybeth's story shifted with each telling. Her grief seemed strangely detached. Some staff noticed how her tears would dry up the moment she thought no one was watching. Others whispered about her odd calmness, her ability to move on so quickly after each tragedy. 9 children, all dying under similar vague circumstances. Suspicion finally took root. The sheer number was staggering, and the odds of such repeated tragedy defied belief. Each loss left behind a trail of unanswered questions and growing doubt. A quiet call to police set the investigation in motion. It was a step taken in hushed tones, a decision made out of desperation and a need for answers. Dr. Michael Baden, the medical examiner, saw through the SIDS explanation. This was homicide. He pored over the reports, searching for patterns others had missed, determined to uncover the truth behind the tragedies. Investigators pulled old files, spoke to doctors, nurses, and neighbors. They retraced every step, piecing together a timeline that spanned years of heartbreak and suspicion. They learned the children died when alone with Marybeth, and that she'd taken out small life insurance policies just before some deaths. The details were chilling, and the coincidences too many to ignore. Her calm in chaos, her dramatic grief for an audience, none of it fit. The more people watched, the more they questioned what was real and what was performance. The whispers grew louder, spreading from hospital to police to community. Rumors swirled, and the sense of dread deepened as the truth seemed closer than ever. Could a mother really be responsible for her own children's deaths? The question haunted everyone who heard the story, challenging their deepest beliefs about family and trust. For investigators, the question was no longer what happened, but what did Marybeth do? The focus shifted, and the search for evidence became relentless. The hunt for a killer had begun. The community braced itself for answers, knowing that what they would discover could change everything forever. As investigators dug deeper, a disturbing motive emerged. It wasn't money. The insurance payouts were small. It wasn't hatred. Marybeth seemed to love the idea of motherhood. The motive was attention, sympathy. When her children were sick or dead, Marybeth was the center of everyone's world. Friends and neighbors rallied around her, making her feel important, special. For someone with a deep need for validation, this attention was addictive. When sympathy faded, the only way to get another fix was to repeat the cycle. This craving is a hallmark of a psychological disorder, one that can drive caregivers to harm those they're meant to protect. Marybeth's children became props in her personal drama, their suffering and deaths fueling her need for attention. The ultimate betrayal, a mother using her children's lives and deaths to fill her own emotional void. The investigation gave a name to Marybeth's behavior, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It's a disorder where a caregiver fabricates or induces illness in someone under their care, not for money, but for sympathy. The caregiver becomes the hero, the martyr, while secretly being the perpetrator. In the 1970s and 80s, this disorder was poorly understood. Doctors trusted parents, especially mothers. Marybeth played the perfect grieving mother, and the medical system became her audience. The diagnosis explained the mysterious deaths, the vague symptoms, and Marybeth's addiction to hospital drama. She wasn't a monster in the traditional sense. Her illness turned her into one. Why did no one stop Marybeth sooner? Partly, it was the community. Schenectady was a place where people minded their own business. The idea of a mother killing her children was unthinkable. It was easier to believe in bad luck. Each death brought sympathy, not suspicion. Medical professionals, too, were caught in denial. SIDS was a convenient explanation. Each doctor saw only one piece of the puzzle. This collective denial created a protective bubble around Marybeth. Her actions were so far outside normal behavior that people's minds refused to go there. The story of Marybeth Tinning is a chilling reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous place for a child is in their own mother's arms. After Tammy Lynn's death, the investigation moved quickly. Police brought Marybeth in for questioning. She played the grieving mother, but detectives pressed on. Eventually, she broke, confessing to killing Tammy Lynn, Nathan, and Timothy by smothering them. She claimed she wasn't a good mother, that she hurt them because they cried. The confession was chilling, but it was enough. Marybeth was arrested and charged with murder. The community was stunned. The woman they'd pitied was a child killer. At trial, her defense argued the confession was coerced, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury found her guilty of second-degree murder for Tammy Lynn's death. She was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. The long, dark chapter of the Tinning family was finally closed, but the questions lingered. Marybeth Tinning went to prison, but the questions her case raised still echo. She was denied parole for years, her explanations shifting, her remorse unclear. In 2018, after 31 years, she was released at age 75. The decision outraged many. Had justice truly been served? The Tinning case is a stark warning. Disorders like Munchausen by proxy exist, and evil can wear a mask of grief. Medical professionals must look for patterns, and communities must be willing to ask hard questions. The lives of 9 children were not lost to fate. They were stolen. Their story is a tragedy that must never be forgotten. For more true crime stories, subscribe.